I'm currently on the San Rafael City Council. I was appointed in January, and I'm campaigning to keep the seat because I bring a diverse background to the seat. So I don't have just one single issue that I represent or that I stand for, and it's really a broad base of the community. I've been involved in the community for about 17 years, everything from Girl Scouts to being a soccer coach to being involved with Congregation Roda Shalom, our temple. So I've worked with a lot of different people in a very broad sense. I have a great interest in sustainability, so represent those interests. But to say I represent one group, that's not what I bring. What I really bring is a broad background and a willingness to listen to a diverse set of opinions and a diverse approach. The top three issues in San Rafael are the impact of the street population in downtown San Rafael, the downturn of the local economy and how do we improve that, and finally continuing to address public safety. So in terms of the homeless, I am the chair of the San Rafael City Homeless Subcommittee, and we have done several initiatives that address the behavior that's going on downtown. And what I bring to it is understanding that it's a really complex decision or complex issue, and it's not one fix it. And we have to be willing to think outside the box to address the issue. We have something called the Downtown Streets Team, which people can Google if they're looking online, being that I have a minute. And we also have a mental health outreach position. So what I'd continue to do is to see how those two major initiatives are going to affect what's going on downtown, and then try new things or alter them as needed. And of course, the city has a police and fire. We've been using those resources in a way that makes sense because they're expensive resources. And the reality is for people in crisis, those are not necessarily the best tools to help them out. The second issue, the local economy. So I support what's going on with the Business Improvement District that is trying to enhance the viability of the downtown corridor. But of course, San Rafael is much more than the downtown corridor. So it's continuing to look at the barriers for business in San Rafael. So if a company is having a hard time being brought in, or we don't have a certain type of company being brought in, why is that? What are the barriers? Why aren't they in San Rafael? Fortunately, the city has recently hired a economic development position, and that person can be more proactive. And so as part of it, I will be working with them to figure out how do we bring in businesses that we need for San Rafael. And the last one is public safety. Our resident satisfaction survey that was done in January told us that residents really, really want fast response times, and we want highly qualified officers responding either by the police or firefighters. I support that. The other part is making sure that any pension fiscal obligations are in line and recognizing the balance between those. So those are the top three issues. Being that I've been on the council, I've had the opportunity to go through the budgeting process, and it is not one person that makes all the decisions. We have a finance director who comes with obviously impeccable credentials, and a budget is put together by the finance director as well as with the city manager. And so the staff really looks at all the funding and the programs that we have in place, and then that's brought forward to the council. So there are lots of checks and balances in our system. Maybe there aren't in other jurisdictions. In there are. And of course, we're very transparent. Our budget is online, and residents that are interested should look at it, and they do ask questions. So for me, I don't worry about anything untoward happening with the budget. We are reviewed by an outside third party to make sure that all of our financial accounting practices are above board, and we have performed very, very well in those reviews. This might be the appropriate place to talk about one of the initiatives that I have started since being on the City Council, and that is I feel there is a lack of, we could improve as a city resident engagement and transparency. So it's not so much how I conduct myself, but really how do we conduct ourselves in a public forum, both the people that are there to comment, as well as how the council communicates. And we've recently formed a subcommittee to look specifically at engaging residents and improving transparency. Government is historically slow in these areas, and we have not yet figured out how to use the internet other than just posting things or having email blasts. And how do we use social media in order to engage? And how do we get information? And how do we do everything from saying, hey, there's a board and commission opening, to this is a really controversial project. how do residents find out about it and have the ability to come down and talk about it? What I've found is that in the very controversial projects, when people have not been able to be informed that they come in late, they're very passionate because they don't understand and they feel like things happen behind their back. And so for me, the transparency part speaks a little bit to how you control yourself. For me, when people are passionate, if they don't have the right information, instead of saying, oh, they don't have the right information, I think, wow, we missed an opportunity. We didn't do something right on our end. And so that is why this subcommittee has been formed, is how do we eliminate that part of it. At the end of the day, we will make decisions not everyone agrees with. That's the nature of it. And for me, as a spokesperson, as a representative of the community, I do my homework to understand what the community wants, the majority of the community wants. And so when it's disagreed with, I know that it's not me personally they're disagreeing with, it's what the decision is. And as the decisions that I have made on the council do represent community input, I feel confident in those decisions. So that's probably the best answer. And how do I control myself? Again, it's really what I represent. It's the position that I'm representing up there. It's not me as an individual. I really see myself as a speaker, if you will, the voice. Well, really building on the question that I just answered, if it's done appropriately, people feel heard, their input feels valued, and they're willing to show up for the next issue and the next meeting. What happens if people don't feel engaged and they're being understood? They check out. I mean, who wouldn't if you feel like you're wasting your time? So for me, the way that we're doing things appropriately is we continue to have new people coming out to volunteer. We have different people at meetings. We have people sending emails and calling saying, hey, let me find out about this. And we make decisions that represent the community as a whole. And again, there are going to be a few people that might not agree with it, but when it's done appropriately, you know, because the overwhelming feedback that you get is that, hey, you listened and you heard, and you were transparent in your thinking. Okay, so open governance, I think what this question refers to is the Brown Act. That is the act that governs the way that any public official, and it's not just city council members. I was on the Planning Commission for nearly 8 years prior to being on the council, also subject to the Brown Act. What it means in the council, as there are 5 of us, I can only talk about a specific issue with one other council member. If we go beyond that, then you're creating a majority. The interesting thing about that is the Brown Act never envisioned things like email or computers, and so we're very conscientious about if I email a council person and they were to email it on, that is a huge violation. So the way I handle it is I don't email council members because I don't even want to make a mistake in terms of the Brown Act. The city of San Rafael takes it extremely seriously in terms of discussing issues. We believe absolutely in a transparent process. Again, being the voice of elected representatives, going behind and having conversations that the public can't hear or understand is the antithesis of what we want to do. In terms of the Brown Act, we are educated on it when we enter office. We also fill out an ethics panel. The state requires that we fill out an ethics online course to remind us of all the issues. And I feel really good about that because that's the whole point, is the way to respond to the community is to be very open in the deliberations. I mean, I believe in living an ethical life, whether you are a representative or if you are just on a board or if you're just part of a family. I think having ethical behavior is underlying to having a functioning society where voices are heard and where we can achieve good things and the right things. You hear stories of back in the day, and I don't mean here in Marin County, but you read, in other jurisdictions about things that were done unethically in order to move forward a certain segment or a certain belief or a certain project. And I mean, to me, I'm so glad that we have moved away from that because, I mean, ethics is it's the framework of our community. If you can't trust other people to make the right decision, it would be chaos. And I think I know as a representative, it's really important that I have ethical behavior as a role model. I have 2 teenagers that I raise, and we talk a lot about ethics. I think high school students start to first think about ethics when they're in high school, and they start to be presented with situations like that. And I mean, for me, that is one of the things I absolutely bring, regardless of the issues or the way I'm going to solve stuff that's happening downtown San Rafael. I was raised to do what's right and make good decisions that that benefit everybody and not just me personally. And I think that's really important in an elected official or appointed official, to not have someone's personal agenda, because that's not what this position's about.